So we left off with Chapter 2 talking a little bit about finishing up the first scene, where we have Drake and Exion meeting up and then going to the castle. Now, as the next chapter begins, we're going to go a little bit farther out. It's going to be 1 year later, so there is going to be time that passes. This time, I wrote down a couple of points that I'm going to read off so then I can make this as brief as possible so then I don't get off on too many tangents. So the scene begins with an obvious change of time. Again, 1 year later, it seems that maybe a year has passed. Drake is now an official member of the family, but not adopted. So pretty much he is part of the castle, but he is not royalty. Not royalty. So he's not part of the royal family. He is Exion's friend, considered his brother, but other than that, he doesn't have any titles. Astarva, Drake's dragon, who used to be able to be small enough to fit on his shoulder, is now much more of the size of a small dog, or a medium-sized dog, I should say. So whereas Astarva would have been on his shoulder, now you have a good medium-sized dragon right here. That would be roughly about, this size. And then there you have his wings. Again, remember there's 4. And so now you got a creature that's roughly around maybe 10, 20 pounds. Definitely not going to fit on his shoulder anymore. Again, his 4 wings are now fully functional, so it is definitely a flight-capable dragon. Exion is still training daily with Sophis and with his magic skills improving. Drake, on the other hand, takes to training with the soldiers instead due to his unfamiliarity with magic. So even though Drake would be roughly about 10 years old, and so is Exion, again, actually Exion, he's roughly around 9. You see that Drake is a couple inches taller than Exion, a little bit more older, but definitely follows a different path, it seems. Whereas Exion has more of a scholarly build, Drake is definitely much more of a warrior, as you can see with his garb. The scene's going to begin with Exion in the courtyard, again practicing with Sophis. Rather than taking on a single target, Exion is expertly attacking several targets at once. So what we have here is you have Exion with his gauntlet able to do much more than he did even a year ago. Now remember, in the previous dialogue, Sophis mentioned how in order to become a master of a magic, it takes years. And so seeing Exion being so adept at magic is definitely something of note in the story of how Exion is able to learn so fast. So here you have Exion, rather than being the boy who had to hold up the gauntlet with with both hands, he's doing it with just a solo. So you see him getting that confidence, that strength in terms of magical abilities. So I'm trying to draw his head right now. Definitely this is a sketch. So you have Exion able to definitely use magic in quick succession. Rather than take out a single target, he's doing several. In this instance, Sophis definitely looks pleased with Exion's performance. So if we want to give, Exion some hair, then you have the mentor, behind him, usually with his arms folded, something like that, in terms of kind of a judgmental attitude. You rather see Sophis kind of pleased with himself, allowing himself to smile. Again, Sophis isn't this bad guy. Sophis is just his mentor that's supposed to mentor him in the best way possible. And so you see him watching Exion studying him, but allowing himself to be a little bit amused. So here we have his gauntleted hand right there, his hands folded like that. Now this is where the dialogue begins. So Sophis would say something along the lines of, good job, boy. Now I want to show you some more magic. And then another magic, actually. And then Exion would ask which one. And then to Exion's surprise, Sophis pulls out a darker gem in his free hand. Instead of gems that radiate and shine like light, this one seems to be full of darkness in the same. It seems to suck it in. So it's very clouded, very foggy, as I would say. So right now I'm just trying to use a little, tools to kind of show kind of what it would look like. You got swirls in this gem. So this is obviously a dark gem. It's going to be grayish with some shadows seemingly to swirl in it, like as if you grabbed some fog and solidified it. And Exion, replies with fear in his voice. He says, "Is that dark magic?" Exion, or Sophis would reply saying, "Yes." He says, "But there's no need to be afraid here. It's magic, just like anything else." So this is where Sophis is going to get his point across. Exion asks, he says, "But my dad said that dark magic is evil." And then that's when Sophis replies. He says, "That makes a good point. It was used by evil men. But if axes were used by barbarians, so if you got, an axe right here, and if it was knowingly used by, murderers and like the barbarians and Vikings, wouldn't you say the same thing, that the weapon itself is evil? Of course not, because it is just a weapon. Weapons aren't inherently evil. Their perception is simply made by those who use them. And so this is Sophis' argument, that the weapon is not evil. It's the wielder. And so, again, Exion's still a little bit confused. And then that's when Sophis says, well, what about fire magic? So like, let's get some red going on here. You got this, red fire gem right here. The thing about that is fire magic can kill, just like dark magic. So why would fire be considered good and dark magic be considered evil? And so then Exion, he relents and he says, "I guess, but where did you get the stone?" And then this is when Sophis explains a little bit. Again, this is Sophis. So this is when he goes into a little bit of explanation. He says, "Your father and I have done our best to hunt down and eradicate the Sons of Perdition." So this is where the big name drop comes. So you got the Sons of Perdition. These are the dark mages that Mercer fought against. They were the ones that used dark magic. They're the ones that had slavery. They're pretty much what you consider the comical bad guys. So they're definitely considered bad, evil. They use dark magic. And what's really important is they hold a monopoly on that. They are the only known mages to use dark magic. And that is why dark magic is considered evil, because only evil men have used it. And so then Sophis continues. He says, "I wanted to study their weapons and see if Mercer was right, but sadly, their magic is just like any other. If you want to be a powerful mage," he tells Exion this, "you must learn to not be afraid of power." So this is where Sophis explains that the gem itself is just a gem. It doesn't have any opinion. It doesn't have any soul to it. It is simply a gem like any other. If you wield fire magic, it doesn't make you a pyromaniac. If you wield dark magic, it doesn't make you evil. And so then Exion replies, asking, he's like, "Well, is my dad afraid of power?" This is where Sophis kind of takes a little moment to ponder. He says, "I don't think so. I think he wants to keep you safe, Exion, and so do I. I wouldn't show you this if I didn't think you were strong enough." And then he says, "Remember," and he hands Exion the stone. "It is what you do with the gem that makes you good or bad. A man with a sword can be just as much a monster as a mage with this stone." And so again, he's showing the importance of agency. And so if this is Exion, and if this is Sophis' hand, giving Exion the gem, he's pretty much saying, "Look, I know you're responsible and that you can handle it." And so he hands Exion the gem, saying again, you're responsible. You're able to use this, and I can trust you. So then Exion takes the gem, he puts it into his gauntlet, and like with any other stone he has used, he can feel a new energy enter his body as he equips it. Unlike the other stones, though, the dark gem had a significant presence to it. So whereas the other gem, like you'd put in fire and you'd feel fire, the dark gem, he definitely can feel something much more significant. And so this is where Exion's starting to understand what his father Mercer was talking about. So if we have a gauntlet right here, you know, the good old gauntleted hand, and you got the gem laying in right there. So Exion puts it into his own gauntlet. He can feel this presence about it. And so the presence is very important. So with Exion, he replies saying, this gem, it feels different. Sophis replies saying, yes, that is the draw of the dark magic the Sons used. So the word draw pretty much means the feeling your body gets when you put the stone in. So any stone you put in has a draw to it. Now, some draws can be good, some draws can be overwhelming. That is why mages always wait until they're ready to use certain powers, because the draw can definitely be too much, just like giving a child a handgun, stuff like that. And so he says this is why you can feel it stronger than normal magic. So dark magic has a stronger draw than others. And this is what Sophis points to. He says, this is why your father feels that it's evil. Power can lead men down to dark paths, so it definitely has more power than other magics. And then he looks Exion in the eye, and he's like, but I know you, Exion. You are strong. You need to wield the dark gem, not have it control you. That is why I'm here, so I can show you how to tame it. So he pretty much shows Exion that he just needs training. Again, it's the whole idea of you don't give an untrained person a weapon that they can't use. He's telling Exion that he believes that, again, the dark magic has no, malintent, but rather it has just been used and monopolized by those who are evil. And so, he believes that in the hands of the right people, dark magic can be used effectively. But it can also teach Exion more about magic, because again, most mages don't use dark magic, nor do they know what it is. So if Exion knows what it is, he has that knowledge, that advantage that no one else has. And so Exion looks him back, he says, you think I can? And Sophis replies saying, I would not have handed you the stone if I didn't think you could. Now use it and prove me right. And then what Sophis does next is he folds his arms again as he watches Exion get into his stance to ready his magic. So now I can draw a little bit of the stance. So again, if you think about magic being a weapon and it's mounted into your arm, so let's say his arm's right here, there's his hand. Again, oftentimes his second arm is used to steady it or to keep his hand in a good steady position. So I'm just trying to draw a little bit of what the stance would look like. You got the mage right here. Again, this is only a sketch, and I am doing my best. So the whole idea is it's supposed to be like a power stance. There's going to be pushback when you use the magic, so you need to make sure that you have a good enough stance to hold yourself up at. So again, here's what the stance would look like. Something along those lines. So I'm definitely changing kind of the point of view here. So if you have the arm going out like this, you have the palm facing upward. Actually, the palm can face any direction. It doesn't really matter. It can face like that. But anyway, here would be like a basic stance of a novice when they use magic. So Exion gets into his stance. He can feel the weight of the gem in his arm. So again, every gem is pretty sizable, But this gem feels heavier. And and he keeps his arms straight and rigid as he wills his own energy into the gauntlet. Again, as I explained how the power works, it flows through, and he sees dark wisps of shadow emit. Give me a moment. He sees dark wisps of shadow emit from the gauntlet, so it's starting to cover it and stuff, right? And then he can again, as it shoots it out, a dense cloud of shadows shoot from the gauntlet, as it was both a solid and a gas. So it shoots out, and he has this solid wisp. So think about how fire is like a plasma. It looks like a gas, but it's much more gaseous than it does look solid. Fire has always been, considered weightless. This, on the other hand, it doesn't look like that. It looks like it's actually a substance, like if I were to shoot ice shards or something like that. And so he launches it, and it hits this dummy, right? And so as it hits the dummy, you just got a simple target right here. The way it works is as the ball hits, the wisps disperse as if it was just gas. But you notice how it completely covers the entire target. It puffs out, and then it just envelops the entire target, and then it slowly seeps into the ground after a few seconds. And Exion turns to Sophis. He asks, what did it do? And then Sophis impatiently replies. He's like, what do you think it did? And then Exion stammers a little bit. He says, well, it looked like it did nothing. This is where Sophis kind of sighs, kind of like looking like he's disappointed. He says, the magic is not as destructive as fire or ice or wind. The shadows wrap around the target and soak into the skin. It will do nothing to a dummy. And then Exion's kind of scared. He's like, are we going to try it on a real target? And then, of course, Sophis kind of laughs. He's like, no, of course not. We've already seen it in action. Be careful with this kind of magic. It kills men far faster than any other. So that's another thing to realize. When Mercer was so careful about using dark magic, it's because that thing that Sophis said. It kills men far faster and easier than any other magic. This shadow, as it gets seeped into the skin, really just is poison. And so then Sophis reaches for the gem from Exion. He hesitates for a second. Exion hesitates, and then he removes it from his gauntlet and places it in his master's hand. Sophis wordlessly just, shoos Exion, dismisses him, and walks back to his own quarters. As Exion walks away, he encounters Astarva, and then who runs up to him happily. So again, Astarva, because he's like the small size of a dog, you can imagine that he has the same behaviors of one. So Astarva, runs up to Exion, and this is, of course, when you see the maturity of the dragon happening. So again, here are the wings, and here's the head. You can see that Astarva, even in such a young form, is going to be very strong. It has a very long neck, strong jaw, big long tail, and wings like that. And then, give me a moment. And then Exion, it says like, what a good boy. And then he hears Drake from the distance saying, how was practice? Exion turns to see Drake again in that same training gear. Now at 10 years old, they look like they are like brothers. They don't look similar. Drake is tall and fit for his age, while Exion is smaller and more frail. Drake's long, messy hair is now cleaned up in a military cut, so he doesn't look like a street rat anymore. Drake's smile exudes that confidence, and most would never guess that he was once a street orphan. This is when Exion replies, saying, it was really good, and then he's like, I got to use, and he stops. He's like, I used strong magic today. This is when Drake, picks up Astarva, kind of like someone would pick up like a cat. And he kind of looks like he doesn't pay much attention to what Exion was saying, and he's like, cool, I got to use a couple spear moves to take down cavalry. The sergeant says I'll make a good soldier someday. And Exion kind of like has this disappointed tone in his voice. He's like, oh, that's fun. And then Drake's like, so what do you want to do today? And Exion kind of would seem to dismiss the question. He's like, oh, I got some studying to do. What about you? And then Drake says, I was gonna go horseback riding with Mercer, and stuff like that. And he's like, too bad you have to study. And then Exion again looks down, kind of disappointed a little bit in himself. He's trying to hide his disappointment. He's like, no, it's okay. You guys should have some fun together. Just the two of you. Then that's when Drake's like, all right, well, Astarva needs to get outside, so I got to get going. I'm just trying to draw right now, what it would look like to pick up Astarva. And so you got the wings right there, kind of the tail, stuff like that. And then, of course, there's the shoulder pad, and all that. So again, that's not a good looking head. And so this is kind of where the scene ends. Drake says, well, I got to get going. See you later. And he uses kind of like the nickname, see you later, X. And Exion's like, see you later, kind of all mopey and stuff. Then Drake walks away with Astarva as Exion turns to his own quarters. As he walks, he overhears a soldier and a scholar talking. And so, if I were to draw it right now, you got the soldier kind of standing at attention, with his, spear or whatever, and armor. Again, I'm trying to draw this as fast as I can. So you got the soldier over here, and you got the scholar. Again, the scholar would be dressed in kind of similar robes as Exion is. This scholar definitely looks like he's definitely one of the people who studies under Sophis. Probably not so much a mage. Maybe actually, again, I called him a scholar for a reason. Kind of a historian of sorts. Again, this is part of the royal courts. You'd have people like that. And you see these two talking. The soldiers, standing by a door or whatever as Exion's walking past. And then Exion's overhearing the conversation they're having. The soldier begins, he's like, you can't be serious. Mercer would do that? And the scholar replies, he says, aye, the king is in deliberations with Dracarun, which is the nation I mentioned in one of my previous videos. He's like, it seems he wants to dispute the issue of slavery. And the soldier's like, Mercer ended slavery only in the West and through much bloodshed. Giving his like little spiel. The East will not give up her traditions so easily, no matter even if the agent of the traveler demands it. And so this is a name drop of a title, Agent of the Traveler. So the importance in this term, Agent of the Traveler, is it's a title that is held by Mercer. That's what he used in his campaign before he was king. That will be explained a little bit more. And the scholar replies, he says, I'm afraid you're right, but the king is adamant about this. The court is on edge ever since he requested to speak with Berlioz. And as he says Berlioz, the soldier, even in his armor, seems to shudder at the mention of the name. It seems as if the name Berlioz was a curse that only the foulest sailors would say in their drunken stupors. Before Exion could hear more, he was already out of earshot of the two. A scholar and a soldier were an unlikely duo, but gossip is normal. This happens normally. This, though, seemed a little bit big. Exion knew that Mercer always had a tender heart to his fellow man, especially, since he took on Drake. But it seemed like he began a second endeavor to fight evil. So again, we already begin the story with him doing his first crusade. It seems like he wants to try a second time, but this time it's going to be in the East. And that'll be the end of this scene.